us. But that is not the right reason to be here. The right reason to be here or in another church who preach the Bible is God. It's only God. We must go to the church because we need to worship God, to praise Him. It's not because we want something for us. It's because we want to give something to God. That's why we are here. So, let's praise God. Let's hear His word and meditate in His word. We are in a series of meditation on the letter to the Romans. We start a few weeks ago, and now we are in the verse 21 in chapter 1. In our meditations on the letter of the Romans, written by Paul at the end of his third missionary journey, and in preparation for spreading the gospel in Spain, we saw last Sunday why Paul believes it is necessary to preach the gospel to those who have never heard of it. Before we move on, let me explain for you. You don't know me. You may think I speak English, but I don't. And I try to put my meditation in Portuguese, right? And then I put in some software for translate. And now I'm just reading. So, I don't read well. And I need your help. You have a Bible with you? Yes? Can I ask for someone to read for me when I ask you? Yes? You? Good. Thank you. Well, then, as now, people might have thought that those who had never read the Word of God, heard the gospel, or come into contact with the law would be considered innocent on the day of judgment. After all, on what basis could God judge them? That is a common question. As I said, many still think this way today. Would God be just in condemning indigenous people living at the poles or isolated in remote forests? Would God be just? Imagine, for example, an isolated tribe in the interior of the Amazon, whose people have never heard of Jesus, but who have their religion and practice their customs. According to this line of reasoning, they will be saved, and God couldn't ask them why they hadn't given their lives to Christ as their Savior. If a missionary, we have here a missionary from Amazon, near to that. If a missionary comes to that tribe and half of them accept him and the other half reject him, they ends up condemning half of the tribe to hell. But before that, they would have gone to heaven because they had never heard of Christ. From this point of view, wouldn't have been better if the missionary had never gone there? Many people do ask that question. Well, that's why the apostle begins his letter by explaining the true state of all humanity. All are condemned based on the natural revelation of which we spoke last Sunday. The wrath of God is revealed from heaven because of the obstruction of the truth by injustice in the heart, and this knowledge is engraved on the conscience of every man. That's what Paul says in Romans. Paul demonstrates that God has revealed himself in the conscience of all men, and therefore they are inexcusable. Please read the verses 18 to 20. We talked about that last Sunday, but let's read again. Chapter 1, Romans 18 to 20. So, man, no, you're going to read 21. So, people all are without excuse. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities are shown. This is the reason for the urgent need to preach the gospel everywhere, whether in Rome or Spain or anywhere else. Next, Paul explained the mechanism by which this suppression of the truth takes place. Men turn away from God and become what they are. That's what we're going to meditate on today. So, let's read again, please. Again from the verse 18 to 27. But today, we're going to focus on the verse 21 to 23. But let's read before and after. Okay? 18 to 27. Thank you. So, men have knowledge of God. Verse 21 affirms that for although they knew God, they neither glorified him as God, nor gave thanks to him, but their thinking became futile, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Well, the people mentioned in this verse are God conscious. That is, they know that God exists and that he is different from us. In theology, we call this the image of God. Everyone carries and transmits this image of God. Thus, atheism is not something natural. The atheist deliberately chooses to turn his back on God, ignoring all the clear evidence in his own conscience and in nature that there is a being far superior to us and to everything around us, and that this being is not equal to his creation. No one will be able to plead ignorance on the day of the judgment. Atheism, agnosticism, idolatry, and all kinds of beliefs that arise from the suppression of the knowledge of God are deliberate choices. They are not natural. Indeed, human nature is corrupted, but not to the point of corrupting the consciousness that there is a God. We know that. When we see the history of the human being, you see that. So men reject the knowledge of God. In verse 21, we see that there are at least two things that the pagans could have done and didn't do. They should have glorified God and given him thanks. But they didn't do that. Even without knowing by name the power behind all creation, human beings should have bowed down to him. This wouldn't save people because of their sins, but it would lead to thanksgiving for the food, for the rain, for the sun, for the harvest, etc. And consequently, men would seek to know this God to please him. But they don't do that. However, that's not what humanity has done. The passage before us today shows a process of rejection by God that Paul divides into a few stages. So, first stage. He talks about the futility of reasoning without God. Verse 21. They become futile in their thinking. This is a process. The first stage is that. This does not mean an opposition between reason and faith, as is often done. There's nothing wrong with the reason. We can believe in God very well by using our ability to think. In fact, reason was given to man so that he could read nature, interpret it, and have an idea of God and his action in the world. We need that reason. Faith is nothing contrary to the reason. There is no incompatibility between reason and the glorification of God. The error lies in enthroning reason, in thinking that only our own logical reasoning, our own ability to analyze the things of life on our own, will lead us to the answers we need. In other words, what Paul is saying is that human reasoning, leaving God behind, will never give us the final answer to all things. He is not against the use of reason, but against the rationalism that sees our reason as the answer to everything. This type of rationalism led to the appearance of Enlightenment in Europe, a movement that rose up against religion. You know that if you are young people here, you study that. This This gave rise to rationalism, empiricism, and evolutionism. Hegel and Marx formulated their theory of how human history works. Where has this led us? Stephen Hawking recently pointed to the theory of everything. Before that, Darwin's theory of evolution attempted to explain the origin of life and its diversity. Well, this theory is now in its fourth revision. It's a very good theory. This theory is now in this fourth revision as other discoveries have been made, such as the language of DNA. You know, the language of DNA confirm the process of, it does not confirm the process of natural selection. We can see that. It has been proven that chance does not generate intelligent information. That is science. What can be verified is that all mutations cause mutilation, not progress. That is science. That's why Darwin's theory of evolution is in the fourth revision. Because how much we know about the nature, we know about God. The second stage is the darkening of the heart. Verse 21. By their thinking became futile, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Because of this folly of abandoning God, man's heart has become darkened. Well, this picture is very clear. We don't have our own light within us. Physically speaking, light comes from outside. As we know, when the source of light ceases, we remain in darkness. What's happened if we turn the light off? The sun off. It's darkness. We remain in darkness. It's like being in a dark room. Once someone rejects the one who is the source of light for all through knowledge, their mind becomes like that dark room. They don't know where they're coming from, where they're going, or even the difference between right and wrong. It's a dark room. Thus, truth has become relativity. Everything is relative. And so man has torn down at all the fundamental pillars of society. We can no longer find answers and doesn't know where he should go. What remains is suicide. You know, last week here in Madeira, a young teenager, 13 years, commits suicide. That's the modern world. What remains is suicide, pragmatism, living for pleasure, often through drugs or drink. Human beings always choose something or someone to serve. That's what we are. So the third stage is the madness of self-consciousness. Verse 22. Although they claim to be wise, they become fools. The worst thing about this third stage is that people have lost their sense of self evaluation. Human beings began to consider themselves wise, thinking that without God they would finally find all the answers. This is how people became fools. Many high profile intellectuals we know are extremely disturbed people. Read about their lives and you will see. Often full of personal problems, full of anger, and insecure about everything. With their walls lined with diplomas and claiming to be wise, they have abandoned true wisdom and are searching in vain for something they will never find within themselves. They have become fools and are no longer able to diagnose their real situation. Fourth stage, idolatry. You know, you and me, we are all idolaters. All of us. Verse 23. And exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images, made to look like a mortal human being and birds and animals and reptiles. Well, there is a great irony in all this. Think about it. People have rejected the God who created the heavens and the earth, but they can't do without gods. There's no getting away from it. If man doesn't worship the true God, he creates another one to worship. And so he always finds himself at the altar of some invented God. Always. That is idolatry. Atheism and agnosticism are also forms of religion. It's as simple as that. This worship is presented by Paul as idolatry. But what is he referring to? In his day, those who thought they were wise were in fact the most idolaters. Paul had already visited Athens, Greece, the intellectual capital of the world at the time, famous for his libraries and schools of philosophy. But what did he see there? An altar on every corner. Can you read Acts chapter 17, verse 22 to 31? 31, Acts 17. I see that in every way you are very religious. Como é que se diz berço? Sorry? Crib. Well, this is the crib of our society, of the rationalism, human rationalism. They are very religious. We are. No way to get it from that. You know, idolatry is the result of rejecting God. What Paul is making clear here is the foolishness of the change made by man. The glorious and incorruptible God was a change for his fallen and corrupted creation, men, animals, and beasts. Please think about it. The glory of God has been changed for the image of an image. This is foolish. I repeat. The glory of God has been changed for the image of an image. Man is the image that reflects the image of God, right? Man is the image that reflects the image of God. So people worship an image made from an image that reflects the image of God. This is what happens when we abandon the truth. It's just illusion. However, we shouldn't make this mistake of thinking that these man-made religions are innocent and genuine expressions of people who want to worship a God but don't know who the true God is. Rather than being expressions of people's sincerity, Paul tells us that all of this is an expression of rebellion against God's truth. Nature and conscience tell us that God is not a tree, an animal, or a river, and that without him there is no true, sincere, and innocent religion. We know that. But why we do that? We also can think that this was a thing of ancient times, because we live in a time with the modern versions of nature worship, which makes nature something to be worshipped. It's not the same. It's the same. I'm not saying that we shouldn't take care of the nature that God created. In fact, that's even a commandment from God. But we can't become pantheists, believing that God is everything and everything is God. No. God is different from us. God is different from all the creation. God is God. Another form of idolatry, something that is also much more common today, is the worship of earthly riches, which the Bible calls mammon. Now let me ask you, what is the greatest motivation in your life? For what reason do you work? For what reason do you study? For what? What do you want most in life? When we ask these kinds of questions, money invariably ends up being the answer. answer, even it is very well camouflaged. Right? This is one of the most talked about themes in Jesus' teachings. Man lives to accumulate possessions. It's true that we need to work, save, and help others with the wealth we have. But that's different from chasing money and making it our priority in life. It's very different. Another form of idolatry, which is also very common, is pleasure. Why you want money? It's not for our pleasure. Well, someone wants money to keep hide. They are more full, even more. Many people believe that pleasure is the purpose of existence, the greatest motivation in life, and they jump from pleasure to pleasure. This is one of the greatest idols of our modern society. We could list many other things as possible idols: children, husbands, wives, family members, careers, our own bodies, etc. The great truth is this: there will always be something or someone to whom you will surrender your soul and give an account of your heart. We are living in the era in which yet another false god is emerging. Yet another idol is taking hold of hearts of many. In his madness, man arrogantly claims that he has created something to serve him, something that will make his life easier and more enjoyable than ever before. Pleasure. Pleasure is the goal. Modern technology is presented as something that will always be at the service of humanity. Right? The seduction is the offer of a power to the ordinary man such as is has never experienced it. We live in that times. The truth is that while many think they are being served, it is they themselves who are serving, becoming slaves to yet another idol. Every day we offer data and more data to an entity that will sooner or later take over all of our creative capacity, discernment, and decision make. And we do this innocently? Of course not. We do everything driven by what Paul points out in these verses. Because we have become wise in our own eyes, that's the problem. We become wise on our eyes. We imagine that we have the power to control things in life, especially what is, after all, our own creation. We are very proud of that. We create intelligence, artificial intelligence. No, don't worry about that. We control. It's another idol. And in The Apostle Paul is clear that humanity does this by rejecting the true God and worshiping the Creator. In this chapter, we can still see one last stage in this process of rejecting God, which is immorality. But we'll talk about it later, if God allows it. Let's conclude today. Look, after today's reading, I think the first thing we should do is ask God to open our eyes so that we can see the true state of our hearts. Everything we've seen so far is a description not only of the pagan world we live in, but also of my heart and yours. There is an atheist in every believer, a silent part that wants to reject God, to be autonomous, to worship whatever God they invent, running away from submission to the true God. That atheists live in my heart and in yours. That's why we can't let our guards down for a moment. We must tell the atheist in us to shut up. We must do that every day. We spend much of our lives dealing with legitimated things, but we often forget the tendency our hearts have to run away from God and reject His ways. Please read Romans chapter 8, verse 6 to 8. Thank you. The mind governed by the flesh is hostile to God. We must know that. This is the reason why many attend church, confess God with their lips, but live as atheists in practice. Many. It's very sad, but we know many. This is why many others consider the church unnecessary in their lives. Or, when they go to the church, they go to the church to get something for them. It's the same. The church must be something useful for us. Why you are here today? Is because you want something useful for you? Or you are here today to worship God? This is why many consider themselves to be bigger and better than the church of Christ, and therefore despise the body. Please read Hebrews chapter 10, verse 23 to 25. let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds. Where? In the church. So the worst kind of atheism is what which profess God with its lips but denies him with its actions. This is what Paul deals with him in second letter of to Timothy. If you want, you can read. That's why I invite you to break before God, to recognize this degenerative process within each of us, and to pray. God, please don't abandon me. Because if you don't change my mentality, my worldview, I will become just another idolater. Make my mind see your glory, and my heart desire to glorify you always. Please do that. Because if God does do that in us, he became another idolater. I hope that a meditation like this will help to make clear the urgent need for Christ, for his forgiveness, for his spirit. We don't need band-aids or surgery. We need the resurrection. And there's no other way to have that than through the gospel of Jesus Christ. There is no other power capable of doing that to us. There is no other hope, as Paul says in verse 16 here in Romans 1. For the gospel is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes. The gospel is the power of God for salvation. It's not our mind, our way to thinking, our wishes,